Okay. Well, welcome, everyone. We'll call the SKHHP Executive Board meeting for Friday, April 18th, 2025 to order. And Claire, would you please call roll?
Certainly. City of Auburn, Nancy Backus.
Here.
City of Kent, Dana Ralph. I know that she was out, and our alternate Marina Hanson will be joining just shortly. City of Burien, Liz Steed.
Sorry, I named my buttons. I'm here. Thank you.
Thank you. City of Covington, Christina Soltis. Don't see her. City of Des Moines, Jean Oxiger.
Thank you.
Thank you. City of Federal Way, Brian Davis.
Here.
Thank you. City of Maple Valley, Victoria Schroff.
Here.
Thank you. City of Normandy Park, Eric Zimmerman. I don't see him. City of Renton, Carmen Rivera.
Here.
Thank you. City of SeaTac, James Lovell. I know he informed me he will be 15 or 20 minutes late. So we'll welcome him when he gets here. City of Tukwila, Thomas McLeod. And I don't see him either. And King County, Sonari Marshall.
Here.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right. Well, thank you to the board members for being here on a beautiful Friday afternoon. And I believe we also have others in attendance from the advisory board. Is Hamdi here with us today? Hamdi Abdul?
I think Hamdi was planning to come and she may be a little late, it looks like.
Okay. Well, when she joins, if we have an opportunity, I'll have her introduce herself to you all. Many of you may know Hamdi already, but maybe not all of you. And so, Claire, I know we have amazing staff in attendance as well. If you would like to help introduce them.
Yes, gladly. Let's start with Michaela Daffern, staff work group members, and if you could just popcorn to the next person. And I do see that Christina Soltis just joined, so we'll mark her present as well. Thanks, Michaela.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Michaela Daffern, and I work at the King County Department of Community and Human Services. And I'll call on Marina.
Good afternoon, Marina Hanson, City of Kent Human Services Manager. I will try to get on video here shortly. My computer is not very happy today.
Mine wouldn't let me in until I gave it a new, said I had to re-enroll today.
Oh,
so
interesting.
I think it's just a Friday thing.
I'm not sure who needs to go next because I joined a little bit late. I might be the last one.
I think you're good. Yeah, Doug, go ahead.
I can go next. Hi, everyone. Doug McIntyre. I am the new Economic and Community Development Director at Maple Valley. And so this is my first SKHHP meeting. Nice to meet everyone. And I'll be in the background taking notes. And hi, Councilmember Schroff.
Welcome, Doug.
Thanks.
All right. And Dorsal?
Hello, I'm Dorsal. I'm the SKHHP Program Coordinator and the IT person behind the scenes for this meeting.
And we appreciate that very much. All right. Anyone else?
No.
Okay. All right. Well, let's move on then to public comment. This is the place on the agenda where the public is allowed to speak. Is there anyone that you are aware of, Claire, that's online that would like to make public comment today?
I see one person in our audience, but no hands are raised for public comments.
Okay. All right, so if you are in the audience and you would like to provide public comment, if you could please use the raise your hand function on my screen. It's under the heading of React. So if you would like to provide public comment, please raise your hand. Okay. If we are not seeing any raised hands, we'll move on to the approval of the March 21st, 2025 minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the March 21st, 2025 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the approval of the March 21st, 2025 minutes, please say aye.
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 Aye. All opposed, please say no. The minutes pass. Item 4, agenda modifications. Are there any agenda modifications today, Claire?
There are not.
All right, thank you. Moving on to board business, item A, reserve policy options. And this will be to continue the discussion that we started at the March meeting. As you probably recall, SKIP funds earned $540,000 in interest last year, which is amazing. And today we're going to hear about 3 different options based on feedback that was provided in the March meeting on establishing a reserve policy. Claire, I'm going to turn it over to you for that.
Thank you, Chair. I am going to, Dorsal, could you allow me to share my screen? That would be great. We'll get my slides up here. Let's see. Thank you. All right. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Great. And just rearrange a few things. All right, looking good. So at our last meeting, we discussed initial ideas and options for the use of interest earnings on the Housing Capital Fund balance in 2024 and ongoing. The board provided direction that the preferred choice was to establish a reserve policy which sets aside a portion of the earned interest to be used to mitigate the impacts of a recession or for larger unanticipated expenses, with the remaining interest being applied to the annual funding round of the SKIP Housing Capital Fund. 30% of annual expenses was the percentage presented, although there was discussion about different amounts, and I'll be asking your feedback today on that percentage. So in your agenda packet, you should have a memo titled Reserve Policy that describes the background and options that we'll go over today shortly. And that was sent to you by me on Friday, April 4th at 3:46 p.m. And is also included in your calendar invite to this meeting. So by way of brief background, from 2019 to 2023, contributions to SKIP in the operating and capital fund earned $153,529 in interest. To spend interest earnings requires the approval of each SKIP member council with allocated earned interest based on their contributions, and this is per the requirements of our interlocal agreement. In 2024, this was done through the annual work plan and budget adoption process, and member councils gave their approval for the use of these funds to be applied to SKIP's operating fund balance. Interest accrued in 2024 on all SKIP funds totaled $540,377. The board has not yet adopted an ongoing policy for use of interest earnings, which is why we're talking about this. So let's discuss the revised policy options based on our March meeting. So option 1 is what was presented and discussed at the March meeting that the board at the time was most interested in. It would maintain the equivalent of 30% of annual expenditures in reserve and apply the remaining to the Housing Capital Fund. The reserve in 2026 would total about $151,000. The additional housing capital fund contribution in 2025 would total about $390,000. Option 2 would maintain the equivalent of 60% of annual expenditures in reserve and apply the remaining to the Housing Capital Fund. The reserve in 2026 would total $301,000, and the additional Housing Capital Fund contribution would total $239,000. Option 3 would maintain the equivalent of 100% of annual expenditures in reserve and apply the remaining to the Housing Capital Fund. So the reserve total in 2026 would be $502,000, and the additional Housing Capital Fund contribution would be $38,000 in 2025. So this table shows the amounts that would go into reserve in the first and second year, and how much would be allocated to the Housing Capital Fund this year and next by option. So I used a conservative estimate of $200,000 for the earned interest in 2025. So basically the lower percent in reserve would mean less in the reserve and more in the Housing Capital Fund, and a higher percentage means that there would be more in reserve and less in the Housing Capital Fund. So ongoing, all options would result in similar amounts being allocated to the Housing Capital Fund. So I'm seeking board feedback on the options presented. Mayor Ralph is not here today, but she did let me know she preferred the higher reserve percentage. The amount decided upon to go into reserve will show up in the budget and will be considered unrestricted fund balance in reserve. And the amounts that go into the reserve will also be included for approval in the work plan and budget adoption process. So with that, I would love your feedback.
Thoughts from anyone? If you want to raise your hand, or if you just want to speak up, that's fine too, because I can't see everyone's face on the screen right now.
And I do see that Mayor McLeod joined, so I will mark him present.
Thank you, and sorry for being late.
No worries, welcome. So any thoughts from any of the members on these options for a reserve policy? Yes, Victoria.
Thank you, Mayor. I lean toward the 60 or 100% as well. Initially, I was thinking more the 30% so that we're putting as much of those reserves to use. But considering the state of things right now and the general instability, I think it makes sense to hang on to enough that would actually could potentially keep us viable and moving forward if we had a rough year or two. So I feel like to be on the safe side, I would feel more comfortable with either option, the 60% or the 100%.
Thank you. Any other thoughts in that regard, or for the 30%? Carmen.
Thank you, Mayor. I am in agreement with Councilmember Schroff. I think 60%, I'm leaning more towards 60%, but also, and I'm a verbal processor, so that's what I'm going to do. With everything that's happening, I expect it's going to get only more expensive to be building. So we may not be building as much with rising costs. So having less going to the capital fund and having more going to the reserves while we kind of navigate this unknown, what is probably going to last a couple of years, right? Even the recovery of it all is going to last a couple of years, right? So I'm with Councilmember Schroff on this one. 100% just seems like then we're just saying basically, no, we're not going to be building while we don't know what's going on. I think 60% kind of leaves me with the possibility of like, there could be a project that pops up and we could have money for it, right? By the grace of the fates. But yeah, that's those are kind of my initial thoughts. I would want to hear what everyone else is thinking reading national tea leaves and everything.
I'm not sure those national tea leaves are able to be read yet, but just a reminder, this is just for the interest income that we've received, not any of the other funding, not the $1,590 or the 1406. This is because we had interest income last year because those funds were being held. Some of them had been directed, but they were encumbered, but they had not been allocated out yet. So
Got it.
This is for that type of reserve policy.
Understood. Thank you for the clarification. That actually then reaffirms I'd probably then would be leaning towards 60 to 100%, like Councilmember Schaaf was stating.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sonari, I saw you had your hand up. Did you?
You said what I was going to say.
Okay.
About this being the reserve and not the full.
Okay.
Yeah.
I feel good when I say something that you are going to say.
Aw,
Makes me
that's
feel
sweet.
good. Anybody else have any thoughts? Okay, so Claire, it says that we have no action reading the wrong one, for possible action today. How are board members feeling about action on either the 60% or 100%? I think there was more leaning towards the 60%, but how are you feeling about voting on that today?
And Chair, I see Marina has her hand up.
Thank you, Marina.
Hi, I just wanted to chime in. I believe Mayor Ralph is more inclined to the 100%. Right now, I think given what everyone else has already said, unfortunately, I was not able to connect with her prior to the meeting though, so I apologize for that. So I don't have her definite vote on this, so I would be a little hesitant to vote on her behalf, but still interested in hearing what everyone else has to say.
Brian.
Thank you, Mayor. Just two quick questions, Claire. One is, could you remind us what the typical contribution we have given out of this fund towards project, like what the average amount is? I'm having trouble remembering that. And then the second question is regarding voting today or later. Is there an urgent need to do this today? Because I don't think it was advertised as action. Not that it matters, but I'm just curious if there's an urgent need to make that decision today.
Sure. So we advertised it as possible action, but there is not an urgent need to do it today. So we can do it in coordination with the adoption of our 2026 work plan and budget at the May meeting. We just need to know the outcome of this vote in order to inform our budget, and our budget has to be approved by next meeting. So however we do it, it'll need to be done by next meeting. At the next meeting, I should say. And then regarding your first question, is the question about our typical award in the Housing Capital Fund?
Right. I'm trying to get a sense for how much we should move this into the reserve total, if it helps, or if it's not really going to be that significant.
Yeah, so typically it's around, it varies, but I like to say about $1 million would be a typical award. We don't like to go generally less than that, though we have, but we've gone as high as 2.8 million as well for a single award. So this year we're looking at, and you'll hear more about it on another agenda topic, but we have about 3.4 million that we'll make available as of now for this year's funding round. That could go higher depending on a few different factors. I'm working through with some jurisdictions right now. But right now we know we have about 3.4 million, if that helps. So if you would add, you can add the remaining, this column here, remaining to Housing Capital Fund, that would be added to that 3.4 for this funding round.
Okay, thank you for that.
Tom?
I'm
Oh,
okay
sorry.
with, yeah, if we want to vote today, that's fine. It sounds like that was, if we're advertising for possible action, then that's fine. I'm happy voting today if that was the case. And then, yeah, my feeling on this is not super strong either way. I think the 60% would be my preference, given that we have a 3.4 is what you said, Claire, is what we're dealing with, and so we're talking about adding, at most, well, about 10% difference with this vote is kind of what I'm seeing. So I think 60% is fine for me.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. I would be echoing some of the thoughts I've already heard. So I would be in support of the 60% policy and would be prepared to vote today.
Thank you. Liz?
I'm exactly the same as Tom. I was just going to say I'd be in support of voting and 60%.
Thank you. Christina?
Thank you. Hi. I too can vote today. I'm not too strong between the 60 or 100. I wish it impacted the capital fund more, but if there is a strong urge towards the 60%, then I'm in favor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any other, Sonari?
Just didn't know if you want to hear from everyone. I can vote today. I don't have strong feelings, so I will go with where the energy is.
Okay. Excellent. All right. If there are no other comments, if there is a motion to approve one of the reserve policies, I will entertain that motion.
Mayor, or Chair, I would just, if folks, so just acknowledging Mayor Ralph isn't here, but just, I don't, if that's a considering factor to vote today or to postpone the vote, wanted to just put that out there as well.
Yeah, that's why I said if there is
Okay,
one, we'll
thank you.
entertain it. If not, we can wait until next month. All right, I am not hearing anyone or I'm not seeing any hands raised. So we will hold that until next month. And so thank you for the great discussion today. And we look forward to having everyone in attendance next month to be able to vote on that. All right, moving on to the 2026 work plan and budget draft review. Claire's got slides up already. The SKIP interlocal agreement requires that we as the executive board recommend an annual work plan and our budget. And in January, we completed a survey, if you recall, to support the development of the annual work plan. And then we provided additional information at the March workshop. So today's discussion will inform the final 2026 work plan and budget anticipated for adoption at our May 16th executive board meeting. So we're going to have lots to do at next month's meeting. So Claire has her slides up, so I'll turn it over to Claire.
Thank you, Chair. So to orient ourselves to the 2026 work plan and budget development process, I like to start with this process diagram. So we start this process each year with a survey to you, as the Chair mentioned, the Executive Board. So thank you all for your input on that. I use that information to inform any proposed changes to the work plan. I solicit input from the staff work group. Then last month, I presented an initial draft to you and you provided feedback. Thank you for that. We'll continue that discussion today with a revised draft for your review attached to your agenda packet. So after today, any changes that are incorporated based on our conversation will be shared with the staff work group. You will review the final draft and adopt the work plan and budget at your next meeting in May. So your councils will then take action to adopt the work plan and budget. I am on most council calendar agendas at this point in preparation. So many thanks to our wonderful staff work group members for being so responsive in arranging that. All member city councils will need to adopt the work plan and budget by July 7th in order for us to have it approved by the end of the year by the county due to their many levels of review. So you saw this a little bit at our last meeting, but I didn't get to talk through it, so I wanted to bring it back to just make sure folks were in the know about how your colleagues here are feeling about our work plan. So these are the executive board responses to the survey question. If you had to remove 2 items from the work plan, what would they be? Items that are required for the administration and operations for SKIP, or those items required by our ILA, were not included in the choices for the selection. So the items with the highest number of votes was facilitate technical assistance and updates to the Affordable Housing Inventory Dashboard. Rather than moving the item, I reprioritized it from high to medium. We just concluded the most recent update to the dashboard in January, thanks to the generous contribution from the city of SeaTac before they joined SKIP as a member. They were interested in using the dashboard, and so they supported that endeavor. We also discussed with the long-range planners whether there would be benefit to continue to update the dashboard with current data, perhaps every 2 years. We heard from them that the dashboard is not as helpful when the data is too out of date, and there are plans to continue to use it to accomplish goals established in all of your jurisdiction's comprehensive plans. So the item with the second most votes was coordinate with the advisory board in collaboration with housing organizations and stakeholder groups to provide education and engagement opportunities for elected officials and community members. Instead of removing it, it was deprioritized from medium to low priority. The advisory board said they wanted to keep it on the work plan, but in future years, we can talk about whether or not they need our support to accomplish these goals. Convening the land use planners, or SOKEHO, got 4 votes. I left this one as is on the work plan for now, but it's good to know where the options lie for the board in terms of scaling back the time we dedicate to these items. 3 votes were received for meet with legislators as opportunities arise to inform about SKIP's mission goals and the Housing Capital Fund. This one's labeled as lower priority on the work plan already. And as you'll see on the next slide, it was included as 2 members higher priority as well. So you'll also see when we review the draft that I did add the legislative forum to the work plan as we discussed at the March meeting. And we'll discuss that more when we get to that point in reviewing the draft. So these are the executive board responses to the question, if you could prioritize 2 items, what would they be? Not surprisingly, the most votes were for the 2 items related to the Housing Capital Fund, followed by encouraging investment in South King County by private investors, lenders, and philanthropies, and then working collaboratively with public funders at the state and local levels to increase alignment and promote shared affordable housing goals and equitable geographic distribution of resources, both with 3 votes. 2 votes were received to prioritize facilitate implementation of any sub-regional affordable housing preservation strategies, meet with legislators as opportunities arise to inform about SKIP's mission goals in the Housing Capital Fund, and connect affordable housing developers with property owners who intend to sell naturally occurring affordable housing in coordination with member cities. And 1 vote was received to prioritize represent SKIP at relevant local and regional meetings and forums that help advance SKIP's mission and provide a voice for increasing access to safe, healthy, and affordable housing in South King County. On the survey you took, question 2 asked if there was anything missing from the 2025 work plan that you would love to see added. And here are the responses. Let me preface all of this by saying that any items that we might add to the work plan will likely lead to removing an item on the work plan or deprioritizing an existing item. So half the group said no, they didn't have anything to add. One response proposed capital funding for recovery treatment facilities to qualified unsheltered. So just a little background on this one, or a response. So King County voters approved the Crisis Care Centers initiative in April 2023 to create a countywide network of 5 crisis care centers and restore and expand mental health residential treatment beds. This is a 9-year levy with $59 million available in 2025 alone for the construction and acquisition and rehabilitation of these future facilities. And my understanding is that there is an anticipated South King County site as well. And Sunari, I don't know if you want to speak to this initiative at all in response.
Yeah, I mean, I think you covered the basics of it. Folks may have been aware we were in the process of RFPing out for additional sites that closed last month, and that's the first round for up to 3 of the 5 crisis care centers. We also signed on with the city of Kirkland, or with the, rather not with the city, but with Connections Kirkland for the first official crisis care centers. And so we really, I think this is an area that the county is trying to work in heavily already. I'm happy to connect anyone here with the team. It's in a sister division of ours from the Behavioral Health and Recovery Division that is really managing that process, but it's quite a huge resource that we're putting online to deal with kind of reduced numbers of beds for folks in behavioral health, which includes substance abuse crisis. And so yeah, we have I have a very long set of talking points I could go through, but I don't know that we have the time. But I really, if folks are interested in what else we're doing in that area, I'm happy to connect you with my colleagues in our Behavioral Health and Recovery Division.
Thank you, Sonari. Also, a part of this request, so the Substitute House Bill 1406 funds that we pool would not be able to support this. So only the House Bill 1590 funds would be eligible. And at this point, I don't think we have consensus among the 3 cities that contribute those funds to support anything but housing with those funds. The next item was partnering with more private funding. So this is an item that also shows up in the 5-year plan ideas. So I would like to talk more about this one when we get there in June, if that works for the board. The next proposed response is developing partnerships, for homelessness responses and increased shelter and workforce housing development for those who are unhoused. So the first part of this, I'd like to group into the 5-year plan idea about exploring ways to connect homelessness to our housing work. So we can revisit that in June. The workforce housing development component has also been added to the list of ideas for the 5-year plan. So I'm hoping that we can discuss that more in June as well. Another response here proposed reviewing the University of Chicago Myers study. You likely don't know what this is, but it showed that there wasn't any one major event that led someone into homelessness, but rather it was a slow decline of perpetual impoverished conditions that led to it. So if there is interest for the board, we could look into what a board briefing might look like for this one. The last response proposed prioritizing affordable home ownership. And I would suggest that we continue to prioritize home ownership projects for the competitive process of our Housing Capital Fund. which we'll discuss under our next agenda topic. So does this work for everyone? This
Anyone,
plan?
anyone have any questions, concerns, thoughts about this? Carmen?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I know we're at a place right now where we can't be adding stuff to the work plan because we need to be taking stuff away. But I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I do have an interest in both the capital funding for recovery treatment facilities to qualify for unsheltered individuals and developing partnerships for homelessness response to increase shelters and workforce housing, developing for those who are unhoused. I think both of that can also eventually lead someone not only out of houselessness, but then later into homeownership. It's a long plan. It's planting seeds for, in the future. And so I think both of those fall under, and maybe it could be, I don't know how it could be worded, but I know I don't want to be a problem child here, but I just think those are important.
Thank you. Any thoughts on that? So Carmen, if I understand correctly, you're wanting to kind of combine the two, is that
verbally processing out loud, and I think that's what I'm saying. Yes, Mayor Backus, I appreciate you interpreting that correctly for me.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's a way to maybe combine them because they're both falling under working with those who are unhoused, and I know that's been I think an area that we need to have some level of priority in. Especially as we've seen the houselessness crisis get just more and more robust. I just think that we need to lean into that and at least work with those two in a way of maybe combining them. If, again, the rest of the board has interest in that in comparison to what was prioritized and then also deprioritized. Like, I'd be open to hearing more about it because I know this is an issue in all of our cities.
Great.
And for awareness, I do plan to bring back the 5-year conversation and including what to do about Skip's role in homelessness and what the board feels generally about that. And so if it's helpful, that would be my plan, would be to have a deep discussion in June about that, and we can include both of those items as well.
Great. James.
I was just going to emphasize the timing on that, Claire. I think that's really good to do it in one of the in-person meetings. I think you just get a different level of, you can go into in-depth a little bit more. We can do some small group stuff. And so that's just one of those things for me to remember to also block it out and make sure that that's one where I'm making the time to be there.
June 13th.
Great. Okay. There's something in the chat that I missed. Oh, on the crisis care centers. Thank you, Sonari, for that. All right, Claire, please proceed.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So I saw the look on everyone's face at our in-person meeting when I asked you to go and look at the red line version of the draft. So I tried to make it a little more succinct for you and put it into slide format. So these, the following slides are snips taken directly from the red line version of the draft work plan, which you received in your agenda packet on April 4th. So we're going to review the changes together. There's also a clean version which accepts all of the red line changes included in your agenda packet and your calendar invite. So under action 2, this is goal 1, fund the expansion and preservation of affordable housing. So you can see that the contract documents and for the projects ready to move forward are not called out by name, but rather referred to by the funding round. This is in case a project moves forward more quickly or slower. That way we have that flexibility. So the rest are updates to reflect the work plan year, so from 2024 to 2025. just some language that cleans this up. And under indicators, the number of housing units or number of projects funded. So I changed it to and because that was something we reported out in our annual report. So just updating that to reflect what we currently do. So goal 2, clarity was added that the subregional affordable housing preservation strategies would be in coordination with the long-range planners. The phrase technical assistance was removed from the project to update the affordable housing inventory dashboard, since that was an underutilized service that we offered. Looking at items 8 and 9, those were swapped so those actions affiliated with our long-range planners are next to each other, and this is items 6 through 8. As we discussed earlier, items 6 and 7 were reprioritized from higher to medium priority. Item 9, build relationships with developers, was also reprioritized from medium to lower priority. This is because we have done a good job. Also, Dorsal has done a great job of building relationships for the last 2 years with these developers, and will continue to do so, but in a less intense way than we have. Under indicators, that language is included to reflect that the update to the dashboard will likely begin mid-year 2026 and likely end in early 2027. And in terms of indicators, I'd like to modify the number of relationships fostered instead of built to account for those relationships we already have, plus those that are new. Under goal 3, serve as an advocate for South King County. Items 11 and 12 were swapped in position to account for reprioritizing item 12 from medium to lower priority, which we touched on briefly earlier when we discussed the results of the survey. And under item 14, you'll see I added hosting a legislative forum, which the board requested last meeting. You'll also notice I added that the forum would take place in odd-numbered years. You'll see under item 16 the inclusion of an affordable housing tour in even-number years. So this is my proposal to you. Since both of these are important events for SKIP and have a lot of value, they also take up a lot of staff time coordinating them and executing them. So my hope is that you would be open to the idea of switching off each year these events. And we can try it out for a couple of years and see how it goes. But the affordable housing tour, we got a lot of really great feedback from those that were able to attend. And we're excited about the legislative forum this year as well. So I'm open to that. Would love to hear any thoughts on that proposal.
Any thoughts?
I'm a fan.
Carmen?
I'm
Yeah.
here for it. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm seeing some thumbs up, some head nodding. I think that's a good thing, Claire. Sonari.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of alternating and not trying to do lots of things in the same year. I think that's great. I'm wondering where it is that we kind of codify what we mean by a legislative forum. I think we had a pretty good conversation last time about like focusing on where we all are in alignment, focusing on the work of SKIP, and not sort of one of these big agenda setting things that folks do. And so trying to figure out like where, because if we're talking August, it feels very close, where it is that we make sure we're all on the same page about the scope of the event. Maybe that's the next meeting. But in terms of the ideas and the work plan and not doing everything in 1 year, I like it.
Thank you. Yes, and my plan would be to have a deeper discussion and an agenda topic for our May meeting. to talk through details and what the board's expectations are. And I can bring a write-up proposal of what that looks like. That would be my plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
All right. Moving along. So goal 3 is so big, I couldn't fit it all on the slide, so I broke it up. So indicators, 2 indicators were added under goal 3. The number of collaborative work sessions held with public funders, and South King County Affordable Housing Tour successfully executed. All right, goal 4. Manage operations and administration. So the blue numbers and lines, this just reflects the addition of item 16 under goal 3 about the affordable housing tour. So item 21 was added, establish and implement monitoring and compliance process to ensure Housing Capital Fund projects maintain affordability for tenants. We don't currently have a formalized process in place, and I'd like to develop one to ensure the projects we fund are complying with the terms of our covenants and contracts. A corresponding indicator was added, as you can see. So any questions about any of the proposed changes we talked through under any of the goals?
Okay. Not seeing or hearing any.
Super, thank you. All right, so let's move on to the budget. So you can view the budget. It's on the last page of the work plan. And if you did want to look at it, I'd suggest viewing the clean version, which is included in your agenda packet. So I'm going to summarize the changes from the 2025 budget rather than show you the budget. So in terms of revenue, so the draft reflects a 15% increase in member dues over last year. No one is moving into a new population tier. And if you recall the discussion during the last 2 budget development processes, the board adopted a policy back in July 2021 to increase member dues each year by 15% through 2026. The goal is to work towards a balanced budget whereby our revenues can fully support our expenditures. For 2026, we are as close to achieving this as we've ever been. Your councils were briefed on the increases in 2023 and 2024. In terms of expenditures, overall budgeted expenditures are proposed to increase by 7% over 2025. The proposal also includes aligning the budgeted categories with our administering agency. So these categories are also the ones that show up on our quarterly reports, so they should look familiar to you. And by doing this, salaries and benefits would have their own line item rather than showing up together under one line item. Professional services would roll advisory board compensation and travel into it. And salaries and benefits are budgeted similar to 2025, which is aligned with the actual spend. Interfund IT for our technology services provided by the City of Auburn is increasing 14%. These are costs that every department pays depending on the number of FTEs there. So professional services now encompasses advisory board compensation at $14,400. So there's no increase from 2025. Contract attorney budgeted at $30,000. This is $5,000 more from the previous year. Third-party construction reports at $6,000. Travel at $6,000. Professional development at $6,800. Our Housing Development Consortium member dues at $725. Our annual license to the state of Washington for our nonprofit state status at $20. And as mentioned at our March meeting, the current draft includes $18,000 for the dashboard update that we discussed last meeting. That wasn't included in last month's draft that you saw, but is included in the one in front of you. And that 18,000 would be an anticipated expense every other year, since we would be updating the dashboard anticipated every other year. So the proposal is to increase the professional service budget by 26,000 due to the dashboard update and anticipated higher rates for contracted services. 2027's professional service budget would be less than this year's, since the dashboard update would have been finalized, but then we'd see it again in 2028. So this budget proposal would leave an ending fund balance in 2026 at about $293,000, and we would be spending down about $44,000 in fund balance. So with regards to the budget, I'd be happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Questions, comments?
And that the earned interest also would be applied to the budget as well at the end in reserve, whatever's decided at the next meeting.
How are you all feeling about this budget? Okay, I see a couple of thumbs up. Good. Victoria.
Sorry about that. Trying to get to my unmute. Thank you very much, Chair. I have a question, and we don't need a lot of explanation on it. And it looks really actually cool to me. So there's advisory board compensation, and I didn't know that. So I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about. It's probably broken down, and I didn't see it in the packet, but what that translates to, like per meeting, per member, that kind of thing, because I haven't heard a ton about compensations on advisory boards, and I think it makes a lot of sense in this case, especially. So I just want to learn a little bit more about it, if you don't mind.
Sure. So, and Dorsal can correct me if I'm wrong, but we budget every member potentially could be eligible depending on their situation. I think it's for folks that aren't currently compensated for their participation on the advisory board. So if folks are, say, hourly employees in their job, but they don't get compensated for their time participating with us, they're eligible for compensation. For folks where, they're representing their organization and they're getting paid through their salary, they wouldn't be eligible for compensation. And I believe the amount is $50 for each virtual meeting. And I want to say it's 75 maybe for in-person. Dorsal, help me out. Lifeline.
Yes, it's $50 for virtual and $70 or $75 for in person, but the advisory board has yet to meet in person. Yeah, we've only done virtual, and as of right now, we have 2 advisory board members that are accessing the compensation, both of whom have lived experience accessing affordable housing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That answers my question. Appreciate it.
Great.
Yeah, and the executive board adopted that policy, I want to say, in 2022. So.
Other questions or comments before we move on? All right, Claire?
Thank you. Well, we are on a roll. So moving on to the Housing Capital Fund Guidelines and Priorities 2025 discussion.
Yes.
So this is our fourth annual funding round this year, if you can believe it. And it's my third with you all. So as of last month, we began getting our contributions out the door to these projects, which is really only just the beginning for us. This is an exciting time for South King County affordable housing, and we are all doing our part to address the critical housing shortage. So thank you all for your leadership in this space. And let's just keep that great progress going. The board adopted annual Housing Capital Fund guidelines in 2022. And then in 2023 and 2024, slight revisions were made to perfect our process. The 2024 guidelines were included in your agenda packet. And at a minimum, we'll have, like I mentioned, about $3.4 million available this year, with potentially more, and we should know more by June. And for awareness, the advisory board reviewed in detail the guidelines, and we discussed some potential changes, but the advisory board felt that we have a strong process in place and didn't see the need to change it. They also felt the priorities were comprehensive, and they have enough guidance in the guidelines to be able to provide a strong recommendation to you. So I'm here today to solicit your feedback on any changes that you'd like to see in the guidelines and discuss a few items, including funding priorities, set-asides for operations, and aligning on feasibility of projects with other public funders. So a little background, SKHHP members pool resources from Substitute House Bill 1406, House Bill 1590, and the General Fund for affordable housing construction and preservation and rehab. The interlocal agreements for pooling sales tax receipts to administer funds under RCW 8214.530 and 540 require that for each funding round, the executive board identify funding guidelines that includes funding priorities, the amount available, eligible activities, and geographic areas, in addition to other items as well. So every year we adopt the funding guidelines, sometimes with modifications. So these are the funding priorities that were adopted last year. These haven't changed in the last 3 years, except for one new one was added 2 years ago. Economic opportunity was the new one, but the others have been there since the beginning. So my first question to you is, do these still reflect your priorities? You'll also note that home ownership is here, which was a board member request to prioritize. And there is more detail included in the guidelines that describe what these are. If there's questions, we can certainly go over that. I can share my screen if you're interested.
Any questions, any thoughts about whether these are still the funding priorities? Anything need to be deleted? Anything need to be added? Any that you have questions about? Victoria.
Thank you. I think this is a great list, and I'm just wondering one thing, have we contemplated adding climate equity to it?
I don't know that we have in the past.
Is it it does seem like, you know, it kind of goes hand in hand with what we're doing. Like maybe one thing that we're maybe missing. I'd be curious to hear others' thoughts on that.
Other thoughts on climate equity? Not seeing any hands raised.
I don't know if it's an ill-formed thought, which is that if we do that, we should try to figure out, we just need to define it a little bit. Having just given our Earth Week presentation this weekend, and I'm doing the same one next week, you know, there's a way that could be defined as transit-oriented development, could be defined as green features on buildings. All affordable housing buildings that go through the Washington State funding have to meet the evergreen development standards. So if we're looking for something, we want to make sure it's a higher bar than what's already required.
Great, thank you. Tom?
I would support that request to have some level of climate consideration. I'm not sure what that level is, but I think at some level it should be listed.
Okay. Christina?
Yeah, thank you very much. Since I sort of, it's in a developing question and both suggestion, like Sunray mentioned, Washington State has pretty stringent requirements. If we're looking to go above that, what does that look like? And will we limit potential structures getting built within, you know, with the help of SKIP? Because I don't know if anybody's built anything recently, but Washington State certainly has requirements that target green buildings and climate change. So what does that look like, and what is the real suggestion here?
So what the priorities, how the priorities are used in evaluating a project. If a project wouldn't have climate equity, it doesn't preclude it from receiving SKIP funding. The priorities are used to just ensure that the project applications are meeting some of the priorities, not all of them, because some of these are in conflict with each other, right? Like home ownership and preservation, for example. It wouldn't mean a project wouldn't be eligible for it. It would just mean when we're reviewing the applications, if one does include it, that would be considered a positive thing, as it would be under our priorities.
So like extra credit?
Extra credit.
Okay. James?
Yeah, actually, that's more or less what I was gonna voice, is what this stuff comes down to, I think, is whether or not these will score additional points on an application. So if we're gonna propose anything as being like something we believe in and think should be a part of all housing, then I think that's easy enough to do, and we should add it in. If we're talking about adding numeric value to it and saying, you know, projects that meet a certain green standard, like you said, that is above the ones that are already required, just as being a builder in Washington and further a builder in King County, I kind of want to see how those points affected the rest of their application beforehand, before I could say, yes, let's add it as a scoring item. Adding it as a priority, as a philosophical agreement, 100%. But as a scoring item, I get a little bit hesitant, just because there's already, I think affordable housers are hit with a lot of green building things that end up slowing down the production of housing, and that aren't, and I mean, like EV charging stations, you know, the vast majority of folks who live in affordable housing do not own electric vehicles, and developers have to add in electric vehicle chargers for green standards in some situations. And those just raise the cost of development and make it really hard for folks to pencil on building a project that won't really benefit the residents in the buildings at these points. So there are some green standards that I'm, you know, it's kind of like, we've got to balance the environmental crisis with the housing crisis. before we add too refined of a scoring element to what is green beyond what's already required.
Thank you.
So
Victoria. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Claire.
Just to, comment on James's statement. So yes, this would be the philosophical evaluation, as you say, and just for awareness, the advisory board, when they review the applications, we have put together an evaluation tool for them, which is basically how does this project score, high, medium, low, medium, high, medium, low, on all of these items. With our priorities, we're going to revise it this year to ensure that it's just what priorities were included, so we have that. And then essentially we take this and we put scores to these evaluations, but it's more of how feasible is this project, those get scores. How ready is this project, those get scores. How complete was the application, we get a score. But ultimately, the way we use these to inform the recommendation is it's a starting point for the conversation with the advisory board. It's saying everyone looked at it. These were the numbers we got for the projects. Let's have a conversation and discuss. And so they're not these hard and fast, scoring numbers, get the high, is the automatic winner. There's a lot more conversation and heart that goes into the decisions. And so wanted to just make sure the board was aware of that.
Thank you. Victoria.
Thank you. And I appreciate everybody's comments. It's helpful as we look through this, and I love that it's designed with the intent of having a more thoughtful conversation, not just hard numbers. I would say part of my intent with climate equity, when I'm saying climate equity, I'm not just thinking about, is it a green building, thinking about what goes along with equity, which is so often those types of developments historically have been, it could be in areas where they're, highly polluted, which some of that we can't control because they need to be transit-oriented development is really beneficial, which is going to automatically put you usually closer to highways and things. But in addition to that, are you near a heavily polluting business or factory, or are you right underneath a flight path? Or those are the types of things that often put people in affordable housing at a greater disadvantage. So I think putting some attention as to where they're going, so that they're not further disproportionately impacted by their surroundings, would make a certain amount of sense if we're not already looking at that. Is kind of more the point I was looking at.
Thank you. Okay. Anything else under funding priorities? All right.
So what I can do is in next month's draft that you'll see is I can add some language for climate equity to be added as a funding priority. And you all can tell me how you would like to modify that language and if I captured it correctly. If that works for everyone, and I'll work with the staff work group on a definition as well and get their feedback.
Okay. Does that sound good to everyone? I see some thumbs up. Perfect.
Great.
Sounds good, Claire.
Thank you. All right. So for discussion, so this is our last slide here. So funding priorities we discussed. Thank you for that feedback. And the second item here is a potential 10% set aside for the administration of substitute House Bill 1406 funds. So last year, the board was interested in this, but asked to postpone the discussion until this year. So I could establish if we have the authority via our interlocal agreements to do this. So I am bringing this conversation back to you. Want to report back on this. So the answer is So the RCW basically allows this 10% set aside for administrative costs associated with administering the funds. So I confirmed with our deputy city attorney assigned to Skip from the city of Auburn that our pooling interlocal agreements allow for it as well. Since we know we can do it, the question becomes, should we do it? So my input is that given the new tracking that I'll be doing with expenditures by project, by city, in the Housing Capital Fund that we haven't really done before. I'll be doing that this year and ongoing. And then depending on where the reserve policy falls, I would be doing the tracking on the interest earning expenditures by jurisdiction, by project. There's a lot of tracking of new data and information that's going to be going on. And if we did pursue this, we would need to track the 10% by city, by project. It's a lot of administrative work. So that is my my 2 cents on it. The other reason to consider, or the other item to consider, is it would mean less funding that goes towards our annual funding round for the housing itself. So so there's, I guess, 2 things here. Are you open to postponing this until next year? Or would you rather put all the funds into housing and not administration? So this is a question, if that is clear.
Sonari.
Yeah, I think I'll just go back in time for a minute, since I know we've had some board turnover since I probably raised this the first time. And I think I raised it in the context of folks feeling anxious about was it a 15%, the increase in operations dues that we needed to pay in order to make sure we were a sustainable organization, and was saying, well, given that this source of funds allows you to take out some funding for administration, is that something we should consider in order to blunt the impact of the increase when folks are feeling strained on their budget? So that's the context I'll offer. I will also say, based on what Claire said, if it's a wash with the amount of time it takes you to actually track the funds, it doesn't make a ton of sense. But I had raised it in the context of, folks being worried about the operational dues.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? And Claire, if you said it, my apologies if I missed it. So we just talked about the interest income and the potential that next month we'll approve a 60% reserve, possibly a 100%. But if it's a 60% reserve, could any of that interest income go towards the administration of the 1406?
Yes. The reserve can go towards whatever the board recommends.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts, questions?
And I should clarify as well, this is only allowed for the 1406 funds. So this isn't an option for the 1590. General funds, obviously, are unrestricted, so you just have to be transparent with it. So just for awareness of that as well.
Thank you. All right. Anything else on that, Claire?
Not on that item. Not on that item. Thank you. So this last point is really just for your awareness. So as part of the work plan items, you may have seen I collaborate with the other King County public funders. This includes Arch, City of Seattle, King County, Department of Commerce, Sound Transit, and the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. We're currently in discussion about how to help applicants ensure a project's financial feasibility as the proposal is developed in those early stages. One thing that other funders saw in the previous funding round were financial assumptions used that were not particularly realistic and made projects appear more financially feasible than perhaps they were. So because of this, as a group, we've been developing a set of financial assumptions that we'd like applicants to use. So these would include credit pricing, interest rates, debt service coverage ratio, and operating expenses. So I'm not sure at this point if I'll be incorporating that into the guidelines or not, but I'll know more hopefully by our next meeting. So that's really just for your awareness and wanted to see if there was any questions on that.
Questions from anyone? James.
Yeah, I'm wondering if anyone is using, is there's any kind of like agreed upon escalation rates that we would agree to, like are reasonable for construction? Just when folks are applying, if we see that they're not, that it's more competitive because it looks like it's going to have a kind of a mild cost increase based on construction over time. I don't see that listed here, and I'm wondering if that's one that someone collects, or if it's one we would want to agree on.
Yeah, I can bring that back to our group. That's a great suggestion. If it there's a long list, so these were just the initial ones, but happy to add that one. Thank you.
Right. And Christina.
Hi, yeah, I actually, no questions here, but after hearing this, I truly appreciate the thought that went into this, because as we've seen over the last many years, what's assumed and what ends up happening at the end is far in contrast. It's a huge difference. So I definitely appreciate what's going into that. And then I agree with what James said as well. We even look at the state across the board, and even like Highway 18, I mean, that tripled in price, and certainly we don't expect that, but to have something set aside or to have some guidelines for the builders, I would love to see that too. Thank you.
Any other thoughts or comments? Okay, getting some thumbs up again. It looks like we're good, Claire.
Thank you. So then the last item on here, are there any other areas the board would like to discuss about the Housing Capital Fund guidelines as I make the updates and bring it back to you next month? And we've done a lot of work on this in previous years. If you recall, we shared the screen last year, I think, or the year before, and came up with language that worked for everyone with how we review these projects and ensuring that we are working closely with the jurisdictions who are hosting these projects, making sure they're in the know about them, and making sure they don't have any concerns about the project. So, but if there's not, happy to be done with this agenda topic if desired.
All right. Well, then we only have one more item on our agenda today, and that's updates and announcements. I think Claire has several that she wants to share. Are there any others from the board before we go to Claire? All right. Well, Claire, please have at it.
All right. Thank you. So regarding a state legislative update, Dorsal has included updated slides, which are in your calendar invitation. So please take a look there if you are interested to see where those bills kind of landed. And sine die, I want to say, is April 27th. So it's coming up.
Yes, on the Sunday, the 27th.
All right, so good luck to our state delegates there and getting out on time. Regarding the annual report, so this was sent to you in the April 4th agenda packet email. Dorsal sent it to our staff work group members today to share with your councils, however makes the most sense to your jurisdiction. And this is actually a requirement of our interlocal agreement. So that's why that's part of our process there. Regarding the SKIP 5-year plan that we started very briefly at our last meeting. So I mentioned it in the agenda packet email, but in case you didn't see, I would like to postpone our activity in reviewing those ideas, the idea inventory, and the voting and the prioritizing. I'd like to postpone that until our June meeting. Because unfortunately we ran out of time at our last meeting. And I want to acknowledge that the 5-year plan may take more time for us to work through, and it may push us into next year. Regarding Burien family housing, so also mentioned in the agenda packet email I sent you April 4th, regarding being notified when a capital project changes. Mercy Housing Northwest Burien Family Housing requested SKIP funds originally to support 34 units for families with children who are exiting homelessness, and 9 units for households with a physical disability. Originally they asked for 18 units for households with a physical disability. They are now requesting that the SKIP funds only support the 34 units for families exiting homelessness and 9 units for families with a physical disability. So this means SKIP would fund 9 fewer units for households with a physical disability. However, those 9 units are still a part of the project and will be funded using other sources. So nothing has changed about the overall project. It's just what the SKIP funds are going to be supporting. So wanted to bring that to your awareness, since this is the first time we're putting that policy you all adopted in place, and wanted to ensure you saw that in the email. That is all of the updates I have, Chair.
All right. Well, did anyone come up with anything while Claire was sharing all of that great information? I'm getting some nods, some shaking of the heads. Does anybody want to get out early to enjoy the sunshine today? I'm seeing a lot of shaking of the heads. All right. Well, with that, I end celebrations too. I hope that you all do get to enjoy a beautiful weekend. If you celebrate Easter, I hope that you are surrounded by family and friends. And if you don't, I hope you are still surrounded by family and friends doing whatever it is that you love. And thank you all for your dedication to affordable housing in our region. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.